Something massive is unfolding in 2025, yet almost no one is talking about it. Imagine if, overnight, the biggest market for America's dairy industry simply vanished. What began as a small policy shift in Canada has ripped through the heart of US dairy, plunging once thriving communities into crisis. Behind closed borders, a calculated trade move has left America's top dairy states scrambling for survival. In Wisconsin, the beating heart of America's dairy tradition, endless green pastures and legendary cheese factories have long defined the state's identity. Producing nearly a sixth of the nation's milk, Wisconsin once relied heavily on Canada for exports of cheese, protein powders, and other dairy staples. But when Canada tightened import quotas and rolled out its Class 67 pricing system, contracts disappeared almost overnight. Plants shut production lines. Raw milk prices collapsed below the cost of production. Family farms, some passed down for generations, were forced to sell herds or shut down entirely. For Wisconsin, this wasn't just an economic loss. It was the gutting of a cultural cornerstone. New York, a powerhouse of dairy processing and innovation, faced its own collapse. Known for mozzarella, Greek yogurt, and industrial dairy ingredients, its plants once supplied a steady flow to Canada's food manufacturers. But when the border closed, shipments were turned back, dumped into the domestic market at rock-bottom prices. Processing plants scaled back, jobs vanished. In rural upstate towns, where life revolves around dairy, the silence in shuttered factories speaks louder than any headline. Michigan, sitting on the border and perfectly positioned for dairy trade into Ontario and Quebec, was hit hard. Its high-yield farms and large-scale production had been built for cross-border sales. When orders dried up, milk overflowed into storage tanks and, in some cases, was dumped entirely. Prices plunged. Processing plants cut hours and laid off workers. Michigan's infrastructure had been tailored for Canadian trade. Without it, retooling for new markets will take time many farms simply don't have. In Minnesota, dairy is woven into the fabric of rural life. Small and mid-sized family farms, prized for quality and tradition, once shipped artisan cheeses and dairy proteins north. But Canada's policy change sent contracts into the shredder. Prices fell, and the smallest producers, already running on tight margins, were hit first. Families sold off cows, shuttered barns, and left land that had been farmed for generations. For small towns, the loss of dairy meant the loss of their main economic engine. Pennsylvania, home to a deep heritage of dairy farming, felt the blow across its Amish, Mennonite, and family-run operations. Long-time supply contracts with Quebec and Ontario were cancelled. Excess milk flooded the domestic market. Plants closed or merged. Generations-old farms sold land and herds to survive. With each shutdown, communities lost jobs, tax revenue, and a piece of their history. California, the giant of America's dairy production, didn't rely directly on Canada, but it still took a hit. As border states dumped their surplus into the domestic market, national milk prices cratered. Even a few cents per gallon in losses translated into hundreds of millions of dollars for California's vast industry. Processing plants froze expansion plans. Related sectors like transport and packaging suffered. The damage came not in a single blow, but as a steady, profit-draining current. Ohio, strategically located as a dairy distribution hub, found itself caught in the middle. Milk from Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania once flowed through Ohio's plants and transport routes en route to Canada. When that flow stopped, so did the revenue from logistics, processing, and storage. Excess supply from other states poured in, saturating the market and forcing price cuts. Trucking companies, cold storage, and packaging firms laid off workers. The disruption rippled outward into related industries, slowing the gears of an entire regional economy. This is more than a trade dispute. It's a chain reaction that's unraveling the stability of America's dairy heartland. From small family farms to industrial-scale plants, the Canadian market's closure has exposed the fragility of a system built on cross-border dependence. If new markets aren't secured quickly, the losses will deepen, not just in dollars, but in livelihoods, traditions, and the rural backbone of the nation. This is True State Report. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.